Hello, welcome to the weekly review, program of Sawa Sawa Network. My name is Roger Alfred Mudi, the producer and the host. Today we are going to discuss about the humanitarian situation in South Sudan and the resilience of the people versus the possibility of the return of South Sudanese refugees to the country amid the Kenyan government's position to close the two camps, Kakuma and Dabab, which both have a lot of South Sudanese. And also we'll look into the implementation of Chapter 3 of the Revitalized Agreement on the Resolution of the Conflict in South Sudan, which is about the humanitarian assistance and reconstruction. Joining us today, we have two guests. One is Kuach Pech. He is the Resilience Policy Advisor, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, British Embassy in Juba, South Sudan. Pech is joining in his personal capacity as somebody who has researched in this area. And also we have Zabib, and she's Zabib Musa Loro, the Executive Director of Islamic Development and Relief Agency. She's also the Deputy Chairperson of NGO Forum Steering Committee. We will, first of all, welcome to the weekly review, the two of you.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Pech, you have extensive experience in the humanitarian and development sectors in South Sudan, and also we've read a profile that you've researched widely on cooperatives and agricultural value chains in South Sudan. Let's understand the current situation in the country, the humanitarian situation in the country.
Thank you, Roger. Just to give a bit of a flavor into that, I believe most of us knows how the humanitarian systems in South Sudan look like. With the most recent data, we have according to the UN OCHA, we have 8.3 million people in needs across the country in different sectors. And we have 6.2 million internally displaced person. And we also do have 125,000 that lives in protection now being transitions into IDP camps instead of POCs. And we also do have 300,000 South Sudanese living outside. So in terms of the recent food security situations in South Sudan, we have almost over 60% of the population in this time of the year that are facing severe food insecurity. And we are facing some key drivers of this. First of all is the subnational conflict. And then the second is, of course, the flood that has displaced a number of people. And then the COVID-19 and its resultant economic shocks on populations. So all these have made it quite difficult for the South Sudanese to sort of have access to foods or livelihoods. So yeah, the flood has also came with a destruction of livelihoods, animal health, and all that sort of thing. So basically, that is how the humanitarian outlook is.
And in terms of the resilience of the people, given that also this is your area, what is your estimation? How do you see people being resilient or being able to cope up with those challenges?
Yes, resilience in a way. Nobody can be resilient unless they have something to fall back onto when emergency hits. But looking at our population from the time immemorable, they have been more on facing shocks after shocks. So even the resilience capacity is somehow eroded in a way, because to be resilient, you need to have a strong social ties or social kinship. You need to have access to assets. You need to have access to some other livelihood. You must have multiple sources of incomes. So all of that is absolutely not there. The asset bit in terms of the livestock is in most of the communities, it's quite eroded. And then the market opportunities are not even there. So basically, this has affected the resilience in a way, because we can't say they're resilient when they do not have the basic elements of what resilience should look like.
Zabib, let's welcome you. You are also the coordinator of South Sudan Security Sector Reform Alliance, and there is connection also between that and the implementation of the revitalized agreement and that chapter on humanitarian assistance and reconstruction. What is your assessment? What is your observation? What do you say about the situation versus the implementation of the parts of the agreement that is supposed to give assistance to the people and have them catch up with life like before the war?
Thank you very much, Roger. As we all know that the humanitarian situation in the country is worrying. It's something that, as he has said, it's something that is really increasingly getting worse and worse. And taking it to the other side of the look from the security perspective is that the Chapter 3 of the Revitalized Peace Agreement has not been touched, coupled with now coming back of the refugees, the anticipated coming back of the refugees and other asylum seekers. Things will not, things don't look really positive to our side. In many ways, as in even the people that we have in the country that have been displaced have not been able to receive the services they need from the government. And the government itself has not bothered itself to put the reconstruction funds and the board together so that things can gradually get improved. So basically there will be a very big challenge from the look of the humanitarian, and with the coming of the rains, of course, things will be worse. I'm not looking at anything possible ahead of us in this situation, unless we try to, unless the humanitarian donors and the government come back to the drawing table and we have another plan, restructure the way they are going to respond to these humanitarian needs in the country.
It's interesting that you said Chapter 3 of the agreement, which is under the title Humanitarian Assistance and Reconstruction, has not been touched. And you, as people in the civil society, what have you been doing, or what do you tell the government, the parties to the agreement? Because that chapter was put there because of the situation that existed at the time of the war, and it continues to be there. Once it is not implemented, it means the problem remains. So in terms of making sure that the parties implement that part, what are you doing as the civil society?
From the civil society perspective, we have continued to call on the government to implement the revitalized peace agreement. We have continued to speak to them, and we have also had dialogues and meetings. But this chapter itself was supposed to start even very fast, actually a month after formation of the transitional government. But then the government is a bit slow, and maybe it lacks the will to have this institution set.
And Kuach, let's look at agriculture, for example, or education for those who are under those challenges, suffering the humanitarian crisis in the country. What is your assessment of their ability to be able to engage in agricultural activities or even learn, because the situation is there, but still there are young people who need to go to school and all this?
Thank you, Roger. Before we even get there, let's talk about the importance of the enabling environment before somebody pick up a hoe and move to the farm. There is a number of things involved in there. So first of all, let's look at the stability that is needed to make somebody go to the farm and cultivate. So that stability is very important to enable farmers to be able to access their farm, but it's not there in most cases, because even in our backyard within Juba, you travel from Juba to Nimuli or Juba to Yei and you still experience some challenges. So that's one of the problems. The other problem is also that we still have a huge number of people living in protection of civilian side. So these people could not access any place where they can farm or do other sort of businesses. The second thing, we have the land issue, of course. The land policy is not even yet, the regulatory framework around the access to land is quite problematic, and you hear cases that some people would like to farm, but they wouldn't even have access to land. And then the second is also that the Ministry of Agriculture in South Sudan has massive, ambitious plan to sort of support agricultural extension and commercialization in South Sudan, but then they have a lot of issues. They do not have the financial resources. And when you look at the continental level, South Sudan has ratified the comprehensive agricultural, the comprehensive Africa agricultural programs, development program, the CADEP. And these require every national government to invest 10% of its budget on agriculture. So when you look at the agricultural budget of South Sudan, it's something just less than 2%, to say the least. So this does not give the Ministry of Agriculture the capacity to sort of strengthen agricultural extension services to support farmers. And even right now, we still import most of our seeds from the neighboring countries because we do not have a laboratory on which we can test and certify seeds that are grown locally here. So this is where a number of donors, a number of partners like FAO are working closely with the Ministry of Agriculture to make sure seed certifications can be done locally here, so that seed system is strengthening in South Sudan can work, so that farmers will have access to seeds whenever and wherever they want it. So that there is a whole lot of problems that are hindering the kind of agricultural production right now and in the near future. Over.
Yes, and then still moving on into that, what about if, for example, the South Sudanese who are in refugee camps in neighboring Kenya come back amid the stance of the government of Kenya to close those camps? I've seen the UNHCR recently issued a statement saying they have presented a sustainable and rights-based solutions for refugees residing in those camps. They talk about enhanced voluntary repatriation in safety and dignity while taking into account the movement restriction related to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And also provisions of alternative stay arrangements to refugees from the East African community, and many other arrangements that they have put in place that are presented. As observers or as people who've been engaged in those issues, how do you see this?
Yeah, sorry. Okay, carry on.
From my look, I see the preparations of UNHCR as something that is not going to happen immediately. And since it is something that is not going to happen immediately, what if the Kenyan government insists, the way it has insisted that they need a timeline, they want to close these camps? What if they say that they are closing the camps next month or in 6 months? What preparations do we have on ground here in South Sudan, where our refugees would have come back home safely, because South Sudan is very big and the space is just enough for everybody that is out there? What if they had suggested that they come and make arrangements for those who want to come back to South Sudan voluntarily, and make arrangements that at least will favor people to like coming back to South Sudan other than going to other countries as South Sudanese. Because if they just leave it open, then there are so many South Sudanese who are not interested in coming back home. They will want to go to other places. But as in South Sudan, we need those people to come. But if they come, what have we prepared for them? This is the issue.
An issue of safety. There are people who, up to now, they don't feel safe.
Not guaranteed. Their protection is not guaranteed. Their safety is not guaranteed. Even their livelihood is not guaranteed. So for me, that's my worry.
But we have a government in place. That's the responsibility of the government to provide all those security and good environment for people to be able to do their activities. As also you in the civil society, what would you say to the government of South Sudan?
Actually,
is responsible for
me, it is the responsibility of the government to provide every basic need to its citizens and its people. Yeah? So the government as a government is supposed to have arrangements for its people even before they are chased away and make them love to come back. So government should work on the security bit of stabilizing the country and providing concrete protection to its citizens. Government should work on those things for them to allow the people to come back. Otherwise, I don't see a future in them coming back.
Kuach, you also did research on in Kenya. I saw in your profile also you've been doing research on the refugees who were here, the South Sudanese in Kakuma and the camps here. So in contrast between the two, like the situation here, the situation in Kenya and the situation in South Sudan, as they are expected to maybe come anytime, or some of them may be coming voluntarily. How do you assess those two? What is the situation like both there and back in South Sudan in terms of them being able to catch up, not only them, but also those also who are there displaced internally in South Sudan? Yeah,
thank you. You know, when you look at the issue of the displacement, there are a number of things involved, and this is why the humanitarians will always say we need a principled, voluntary sort of return, because nobody chose to leave their home. Something made them leave them. So if they leave their home, you must first make sure that whatever made them leave their home is no longer there, that they are safe to return. Just to sort of shed some light on what one of my colleagues said, and I'm happy to be challenged as well. Kenya is a member of the United Nations, countries that are part of the United Nations. And they have also ratified the 1951 Geneva Convention. And what that convention said is that particularly, I'm not a lawyer, but trying to draw, it talks about the right not to expel somebody except under restrict sort of defined condition. It also talks about a number of things, and we all know about the principle of non-refoulement in that. So I still don't think that Kenya will sort of say to hell with all this, and then a refugee must go back to their countries. And if that really happened, but that may involve a whole lot of diplomatic conversation, which I may not want to venture into. But then I don't think there is any law that is going to say, okay, guys, you're no longer wanted in Kenya, you're South Sudanese refugee, now you go back to South Sudan. I don't think it's going to happen like that. It's not a sort of an automatic arrangement. In terms of the returns, we all know there are a lot of positive aspects of the return, because a number of us have lived in other countries before. Myself, I have been a refugee, and when I came back with some positive contribution. So refugees comes back with some positive contribution. They bring in different exposure, they bring in different skills. So that in itself would be a plus in terms of revitalizing productions in agriculture, in different sectors in South Sudan. But we first, on our side, need to create that enabling environment for them to return, for them to have access to basic service, for them to feel safe and all that sort of thing. So that's how I looked at it.
And in terms of those who are the proposal by the UNHCR to like integrate some people here to be able to earn for themselves and do activities for themselves, do you see that becoming possible or to a larger number of people who are refugees here?
Sorry, you mean the people who return from the camp and are being integrated?
Yeah, the South Sudanese who are in the camp and then they're given the proposal to be integrated into the Kenyan society, to be part here and be able to be productive and earn for themselves.
Well, that also comes with a number of different challenges. But then, an individual is somebody with who do their own analysis as well and make their own judgment of a situation. So there might be things they are seeing that are opportunities that we might not see. But then looking at is still taking us back, of course, to the Geneva Convention I keep referring to. The refugees also have that right to sort of integrate with host community and be able to find decent work. Looking at our refugees in Kenya, they have not been able to do this in the past. And looking at also the regional politics, Kenya is seen to be somehow protectionist when it comes to access to jobs for the non-Kenyans. So in terms of the business opportunities, and this is absolutely my personal opinions, having lived in Kenya for 15 years. So in terms of access to markets for for South Sudanese refugees who live in Kenya, it might, but then chances are very slim. Kenya is a very competitive market. And
we are looking here at like about 128,000 refugees. That's according to figures released last month by UNHCR. You have what they say is called a provision of alternative stay arrangements to refugees from East African Community, EAC, and that this would represent a major opportunity for refugees to become self-reliant and contribute to the local economy. So South Sudan is part of the EAC, though some protocols South Sudan has not ratified up to now. So looking into that, not in terms of the past, whereby South Sudan was not part of the EAC, but in terms of now being taken, for example, as a member of the EAC, do you see the opportunities coming for those South Sudanese who are refugees who had no opportunities before South Sudan became a member of the EAC?
Opportunities are there for them. As a person, and as a person that has lived in the East Africa for quite a long time, I would say that I see opportunities, but the challenge will be that South Sudanese will have to learn how to compete for those opportunities, or how to fit into the opportunities themselves. Because that is something that nobody's going to teach them. They will give you the skills, they will give you everything, but they will not teach you, to fit yourself into something. So this is something that our own people have to understand and educate themselves on.
Just adding my voice to that, I think Zabib could be right that there are opportunities existing in there, but then the way I look at things, having joined the East Africa community is more of rhetoric than practical, because what has changed? I still go to Nairobi and pay a visa. And if that expired, I have to renew it. And it doesn't mean that I can apply for a job in Nairobi and be considered just like any other Kenyan. So it's just a rhetoric. We haven't seen it in practice, and we really hope if it's meant. So having said that, if things continue the way they are right now, it might not change anything it might not present any new opportunities for the refugees unless there is a roadmap that shows how that actually trickle down to the level of the refugees and how they can integrate, how they can access jobs, and how they can run their business opportunities and be treated equal to the Kenyans.
Well, we're heading towards the end of the program. Let me ask you my last question about responding to the humanitarian situation in terms of what is on the ground already, and the possibility of refugees returning from Kenya, South Sudanese refugees, but also mainly on the obligations of the parties and the government at the moment, which is composed of the parties to the agreement, on implementing the Chapter 3, the Humanitarian Assistance and Reconstruction, which really is very important to responding to the situation in the country. Zabib, you give us a perspective on that, and also we will hear also from Kuach.
My perspective on the Chapter 3.
Yeah, on what needs to be done. The government, like, there's a situation, of course, parts of the agreement have not been implemented, especially on the Chapter 3, the humanitarian assistance. But then, what are the most important things? What are the most urgent things? What should they be doing now, moving forward? Because
the government should try and put the special fund for construction in place. This is the most important thing that the government has to do while we prepare for the coming and then the other humanitarian programs. And then on the humanitarian perspective, I think on the resilience bit of South Sudanese, I think there is a lack of awareness on the importance of diversity, where we know that most of the country's population is deals with animal husbandry, and this issue of dealing with animal husbandry alone makes us to starve on the other side of food. So we don't have food because we have only one side of agriculture. But then we need to educate our population that being diverse is good. While we do the animal husbandry, let's also look at the crop husbandry so that we boost our communities with food. And the other thing that I have always sung is that I think we need to slowly introduce other types of crops to the communities. Let our people start doing agriculture, even if it is at a home base. It is important. Let's introduce other types of crops, other seeds that can be that are good, even in the drought season they can grow. They are important to the communities. And the other thing I think is that even the farm inputs that people are given, including the seeds, including the hose, and all the farm tools that are used, let's bring farm tools that are good for agriculture, that can make one want to do agriculture, other than the hose we have that do not even dig the ground properly. So there are so many limitations that are limiting our people from doing agriculture that would have boosted food growing in the country. This is my call to the humanitarian people, to the humanitarian and us in the national NGOs and civil society, that let's go down and educate our people. And while we provide the humanitarian bit, let's incorporate peace building, conflict mitigation, and conflict resolution dialogues into our humanitarian work, so that while people get the humanitarian support, they are also learning that peace building is good. Conflict resolution is fine. We can, if we are okay, we are in peace, we can do agriculture, so that people can embrace that and start embracing living in harmony. Yeah, so that's my message to the government, to the people, and to the respondents.
And Kuach, let's hear from you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Roger. In terms of the chapter 3, I think I will just talk about two things out of it. The reconstruction funds to which Zabib has already talked about. So that really need to come in place to sort of also help revitalize people's resilience and sort of launch some agricultural programs and support animal health and all that is needed. But the other thing which is also in chapter 3 is access, the humanitarian access and the removal of bureaucratic impediment. So it's quite difficult. Yes, we understand on the massive, on the national level, there is a relative calm, but then there are still some isolated cases of robberies and arms attack and all that sort of things, revenge killing. All of these things, they really limit the ability of the humanitarian part to deliver to the most needed communities. So these and also a number of checkpoints and all that sort of thing. So if you can imagine right now, South Sudan, because it does not have infrastructure, so it uses river for transporting essential humanitarian supplies. So imagine from Juba to Bentiu, there are over 70 checkpoints. And those checkpoints, they charge commercial boat. Each boat must pay roughly $6,000. That is 3.5 million South Sudanese pounds. So just think about it from both sides. In terms of the humanitarian side, it makes it quite difficult. It makes humanitarian supply delivery expensive. The second thing is that if it's a commercial boat delivering commercial food stuff, so all that money will have to be recouped from the civilian. So that means the government is making food prices expensive for its citizens. That means they cannot afford. So those are some of the things that really need to be changed.
But in
so
in
that
terms
our
of
people will have access
in terms
food,
of
either through their own means or through humanitarian. So we need to remove bureaucratic impediment and allow for humanitarian access. Sorry, you want to come in?
Yeah, I was asking in terms of because this challenge of so many checkpoints and people removing money have been there for a very long time. So in terms of trying to take it away, trying to reach out to the government and making sure that they are removed, the roadblocks are removed and only limited ones that are sanctioned by the law are allowed. You've tried definitely, I'm sure, but what have been the challenges? What have been the government saying in terms of why they are there?
Well, I think maybe somebody with a civil society perspective would be well placed to answer that, like Zabib. But the thing is, I think there is need to sort of have to formalize the checkpoint so that they are also reduced and they are limited. And you know that those checkpoints, at least there should be a reasonable number. Yeah, that's what I want to say. Maybe I should hand over to Zabib to look at. Yeah.
Zabib, do you know any reason why they're still there? There are many numbers and they continue to be there despite.
The checkpoint issues is that usually when we raise issues of the checkpoints, we are told that they are put there for security purposes to protect the areas where they have been posted. But initially they are illegal. They are actually illegal checkpoints that are more than the legal checkpoints that we know. Even on the streets of Juba, as you go home in the evenings from around 7:38, you find that you are moved from Jama Juba to Budele. You would have passed through about 7 to 10 checkpoints of different people. So these checkpoints are illegal. But the question is that usually that I ask the people I come across is that isn't the government seeing that these checkpoints are here? If we say that government, please, the checkpoints are too many, can you please reduce the checkpoints to a reasonable number? They will keep saying that there is insecurity, so we cannot. But if you move from 7 days to maybe Gudele 1, you have gone through 3 checkpoints or two checkpoints. is that place really need checkpoints? Does that place need a checkpoint? No. When you move from Nimule coming to Juba, those days they would say that if you are not escorted, you don't go. Mm-hmm. Why? Because there is security issues on the road. There have been security issues that the government have failed to respond to. And the moment people say that now they want to go without the convoys, you find that the same convoys, the same people who will be escorting you, they are on the road, but the vehicles are attacked and people are killed. So the question is usually, why don't we remove? And the answer is usually the security issue. So we are still in dilemma, and we are working hard with the teams to see that these issues are resolved.
Well, with that, we have come to the end of the program. Dear viewer, we've been looking at the humanitarian situation in South Sudan and the resilience of the people versus the possibility of the return of South Sudanese refugees to the country amid the Kenyan government's position to close the two camps, Kakuma and Zabib, and also we looked into the implementation of Chapter 3 of the Revitalized Agreement, which is about humanitarian assistance and reconstruction. We had Pech, Kuach, he's the policy advisor from Commonwealth and Development Officer, British Embassy, Juba, South Sudan. Pech is joining in his personal capacity as somebody who has researched in this area. And also we had Zabib, Musa Loro, the Executive Director of Islamic Development and Relief Agency and Deputy Chairperson of NGO Forum Steering Committee. Thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you very much for hosting
us.
Thank you.